211, Supervision and Team Building with online Professor Joe Lane. All right. Well, we finished chapter 14. We finished chapter 13. Now we've got to do chapter 15, and these are the last three chapters before you take the final exam, test number 4, the final. So we are really close to getting through with all the material that you're going to need. Now remember, the final, part of the final is going to, of course, come out of chapters 13, 14, and 15. The rest of the final will come out of chapters 1 through 12. So when I finish this video, I will do a final review video for you so we go through. Now chapters 13, 14, and 15, you'll know already the knows and be familiar with in those chapters, so I won't go over those again. But chapters 1 through 12, I'll go over those chapters as far as the knows and be familiar with that you need to have there. Okay, let's get into chapter 15. 15 talks about team building and teamwork. And he defines a team as a group of people with a common collective goal. Now, I don't use athletic examples all the time or a lot, but this is a good time maybe to use an athletic. The football team, the baseball team. When you're looking at those kind of teams, you've got folks that have a common collective goal. They want to win the game. And you've got folks, they all don't do the same thing. They do different things, but you've got to have them doing all those different things. In a baseball team, you've got to have a first baseman, you've got to have a second baseman, you've got to have a shortstop, and so forth. And they all don't have the same skills, but they have like complementary skills with each other. And when you're talking about this, a common collective goal, these people are interdependent on each other. Drew Brees is coming back for his 84th year. Well, not true. I think his 20th year, okay? How effective Drew Brees is going to be this year, just like how effective he's been the last 19 years or so, to a large extent has to do with center guards and tackles and people that are protecting him from the rush. Okay, we get the idea. All right, let me sit down here and let's look and see what we've got. This is a good handout for you. Oh, and by the way, when I do chapter 15, there's an appendix right after that. There's a few pages he calls an appendix to the book. We're going to knock out that appendix too, and we're going to treat that as a part of chapter 15. You'll see what I mean in a minute. All right, team building and teamwork. A team, which I want you to be familiar with, is a group of people with a common collective goal. Okay, what's the rationale? What's the reason for teams? Why do we have teams? Even in business, sometimes a supervisor, their name may change a little bit and they're not called a supervisor, they may be called a team leader. And instead of having a department like you normally have, you have a team. Team A, Team B, Team C, Team D. Your organizational structure may be a team structure. All right, so what's the rationale for teams? Let's look at that. 2 or more heads are better than one. Group of people thinking together, that's good. In a team, you get to know the people, you build trust, you want to help each other. And you think about teams that you've been a part of. It could be an athletic team. It could be you won't call them a team, but a team as it relates to church things or to other organizations that you're a part of, or gosh, back in high school, maybe cheerleading or all those types, band, choir. Okay. Rationale for teams. 2 heads or more better than one. You get to know each other, you build trust, and you want to help each other. Teams promote better communications. People get to know each other, they trust each other, they communicate with each other better. And then lastly, there's a support base. You got folks that'll support you. If you've ever been a member of a team, remember that, and you really enjoyed that team, and that team was important to you, you had a support base there. You had people that would help you, and you felt like you had a sense of belonging. Hey, I'm part of this. I'm part of this. Kind of important. Okay. So that's kind of the rationale for teams. Now, he talks about the 10 team commandments. And I know exactly what you're thinking. Uh-oh, we either got to know or be familiar with 10 team commandments. You are absolutely wrong. Nope. There's plenty of listing in this book, and when we get to the final, there'll be plenty of listing on it and things like that. But on this, I just want to point out one thing. You know, if you look at the handout we have under team performance, 10 team commandments, interdependence. Be familiar with that. One of the key things with a team is that team members are interdependent on each other. Now, example. Let's talk about our class, our Business 211, class here at Delta. Do I like this class? I liked you better when I could see you. But yes, I like this class. I enjoyed this. It was really neat. Okay. But were we a team? Not really. We were a group. But because we were not interdependent, or you were not interdependent on each other. In other words, what somebody else made on a test did not affect what you could make on a test. So we were a group, but we weren't really a team. There's nothing wrong with being a group. Groups are just different from teams, and teams have some special characteristics. So anyway, a group of people with a common collective goal that are interdependent on each other, that's a team. Okay. I mentioned a few minutes ago, as a supervisor, you may end up in situations which traditionally a supervisor was in charge, but they may move to a team concept and you become, or the person who heads that up is a team leader. Now he says something here, but I agree with this. I think this is true. I think this is true everywhere, not just with teams. But since we're talking about teams, let me start off that way. Teams are coached, not bossed. You coach a team. Sean Payton does not boss the Saints. He coaches the Saints. And again, an athletic type thing. The same thing with business. If you have a team, the way to handle a team is not to boss that team, but to coach that team. Now let me go ahead. I want to expand this. I don't want to confuse us, but I think that's true whether you have a team or not. If your organization is set up as a team, our author says teams are coached, not bossed. I agree. However, even if you're not set up as a team, if you're set up as a traditional line and staff, well, someplace that you work now that you have worked, that is not a team type organizational structure. Still, do you want to be bossed? No, you want to be coached and mentored and encouraged and motivated and trained and that sort of thing. So I agree with our author 100% that teams are coached, not bossed. And that's to be familiar with. But that should be true for all in the organization. Bossing's gone. Those days are over. It's coaching and mentoring and motivating and training and that sort of thing now. Okay, I think I'll get the book. Because it's kind of the lead into this next thing here. Hang on, let me see if I can climb back up on this stool. I've done a number of these videos so far, getting on and off this stool. This stool is more wobbly maybe than you can tell in the video. I'm not sure. But so far so good. A couple of things about teams. We talked about the interdependence of teams, and then we were overlooking at coaching. He says teams are not to be bossed, they're to be coached. Okay. Then here's what he leads in. It's something on your handout that I have, philosophies used to coach. Let me show you, let me just read you kind of the lead into that. He says, coaches are facilitators of team development and continually improve performance. Coaching involves leading the team in such a way that it achieves peak performance on a consistent basis. That's what you want. You want your team to have peak performance on a consistent basis. And that's what you're coaching them as a team leader to do. This philosophy is translated into everyday behavior as follows. So what kind of behavior goes on to try to make sure that you can achieve peak performance on a consistent basis? That was what I was showing you here on philosophies used to coach. Okay, so let's go through and look at those things that should be present for a person to be able to coach a team effectively. Number one, clearly defined charter. That means you've got to know what you're doing. A clearly defined, where am I going, what am I doing? Everybody needs that. Number two, team development. You've got to develop as a team, you've got to build as a team. You've got to have team development, you've got to have team building. Number three, mentoring. There has to be a lot of mentoring going on. That team leader especially. Team members can mentor each other, but that team leader certainly has to mentor that team. So a fourth philosophy is mutual respect and trust. If you ain't got mutual respect and trust, you are never going to have an effective team, period. Matter of fact, you're never going to have an effective anything. If you don't trust the people that you work with, and you don't respect the people you work with, whether you're a team or whatever, it's bad times. But staying with this, philosophies used to coach, to be that team leader. Make sure that the team has a clearly defined charter. Make sure that there's team development and team building going on. Make sure that there's mentoring going on. Build up mutual respect and trust. And the last thing you mentioned is human diversity. I mentioned a few minutes ago that there's going to be a diversity in skills as far as the team is concerned. We talk about that baseball team, different skills for different positions. Also, we are a very diverse nation. Businesses are becoming more and more diverse as they should. As a result, teams should reflect that same diversity as well. One of the philosophies of a team should reflect the diversity of those that are in their society, that are in their culture. They can best relate to and accomplish things if they are. Okay, I think, wow, that was almost as fast as chapter 14, but I got a little bit more. Just relax. Don't cut me off yet. So we said we want to be familiar with what a team is. We want to be familiar with the rationale or the reasons for teams. We want to be familiar with that in a team situation, people are interdependent. They're not independent, they are interdependent on each other. We want to be familiar with the fact that teams are coached and not bossed. And here are some philosophies that you have to use as you are coaching a team on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. All right, there's a couple of other things at the end of this chapter. Let me see if I can get back up here. He has an appendix, and he talks about success tips for supervisors. Now again, don't get nervous. Is he going to go through all those lists and have no. There's just a few little things that I liked that I wanted to particularly just pick out of here. Time management. I bet you practice time management. I bet you if you don't, you should, because you are juggling so many balls. Family, probably work, other organizations, school. You got to manage your time. I'm a little obsessive when it comes to time management, but time management's a big deal with me. I was looking down through some of these things he said about time management as it relates to the supervisor, and I picked out one I thought was good, number 10, which I'd like for you to be familiar with. When you call a meeting as a supervisor, specify both a starting and an ending time. This will keep participants on track and on schedule. When you call a meeting, specify a starting and an ending time. It'll keep participants on track and on schedule. Okay. If you specify an ending time, what should you do? End. If you don't end on the ending time, if something comes up that you can't take care of during that meeting, then you should say, okay, let's schedule another meeting to handle this. Or if all are in agreement, we will extend this meeting. But generally speaking, when you schedule a starting and an ending time, stick with it. Don't be late to start it, and don't let it run over. That's kind of a deal with me, because back when I was doing other things besides just a faculty member, and I attended a lot of meetings and I had a lot of responsibilities and stuff of administrative nature. If somebody told me they were going to have a meeting from 10 to 11 o'clock, I'm fine. But by 11:10, I've got something else scheduled. Talking about time management. So I got something else on my plate, on my agenda. So if I go to a meeting from 10 to 11, and at 11:15 I'm still in the meeting, I'm fidgeting. Have I ever walked out of a meeting? Yes, I have. There's one or two people, bless their hearts, they didn't really try. They'd set a ending time, they wouldn't end. So I finally thought, I'm done. And so whenever they're a little bit past the ending time, I just went ahead and left. Okay. All right. He talks a little bit about meetings on page 235. That's the page on the book I got this out of. All right, on the flip side of this for me, on the next page, one of the things he says about meetings is this, number 5. Stick to the agenda. Now see, that's another important thing. If you're going to have a meeting from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, you should have an agenda. Here's the items that we're going to cover, so you can move through your agenda. Now make sure when you put your agenda together, you say, okay, that shouldn't take me more than an hour to do. Then you specify the time. Stick to the agenda, save jokes and small talk for after work, and don't go on tangents, unless you're a professor who wants to go on a tangent occasionally about things. Okay. In other words, set an example of respecting the time of the other participants. I think very, 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 very seldom have I ever gone over time in class. I try to be respectful of the fact that this is a quitting time, and if I can quit a little early, that's not bad. But I think this is good advice. Have an agenda and stick to the agenda. If somebody wants to hang around and it's appropriate before the meeting or or after the meeting, and I'm not sure those are appropriate times, but there's other time for small talks and jokes and carrying on. During the meeting, it's business. Okay. And then something else that I thought I really liked in dealing with executives. Number 3, use the method of communication preferred by the executive in question. If you don't know what it is, find out. You think, is that a big deal? It really is. Find out how your boss likes to be communicated with. That's bad English, but you get the idea? Because if you communicate with your boss in the way they like to be communicated with, they're going to pay more attention, they're going to be more responsive, and that sort of thing. Years ago, when Delta Community College was at the Eastgate Shopping Center down on Louisville, we were in a building where when you walked in the side door as an employee, about the second door that you walked by was a nice big office area, and it was our vice chancellor of I think at that time, everything, attendance, academics, and everything. His name was Barry Delcom. Barry's still a good friend of mine. He was vice chancellor. He was just like the vice chancellor for Delta Community College. And you'd walk by his door walking in every day, those of us that are employees, and he was in there, and he'd almost always have his door open. Okay. Barry liked emails. He's kind of like me. I like emails because if somebody emails me, it gives me a chance to think before I send something back, and I can do a better job of sending it. And so he liked to be communicated with by email, and I knew that. So sometimes I have something on my mind I needed to talk with him about. And as I walked by the door, he was right there. And I could walk in and say, hey, can I bother you? And he wasn't just sitting there, twiddling his thumbs. He was busy. But I knew that wasn't what he wanted. So I told Barry, I told him, one day I said, I'm going to see you every day when I walk in. I said, if you happen to be looking my way, I'll wave at you, but I'm going to keep on going. If you want me to come in, you holler. Otherwise, I'm gone. And if I need you, I'll email you. And so that's the way I always did it. If he happened to be looking up as I walked in the door, I waved and kept on going. But when I wanted to get his attention, I emailed him. That's a pretty good piece of advice. Okay, that is chapter 15 and a couple of 2 or 3 pieces of advice off of the appendix. That also finishes up chapters 13, 14, and 15. We're getting really close to finishing up the stuff we need to do the final, which means we're getting really close to finishing up this semester by the time you're listening to this. So, I think what I need to do is I need to probably bring this particular chapter to a close. I'll go and get my things that I need, and I'll come back on my stool here in a little bit, and I will sit down and I will go through the things that you need to know or be familiar with for the final. I'll do a finals review. Now remember, I'm going to review anything that's in chapters 1 through 12 that was going to be on the final. Chapters 13, 14, and 15, I'm not going to review because we've already done that when we went through the chapters. We talked about the no's and to be familiar with. All right, we're going to do the clap of the hands, which tells my executive producer, Professor Pierce, that we have finished another chapter. And I will, the next time we see each other this way, we'll be reviewing for the final. Thank you.